Hey, welcome back to the Motorcyclist Podcast. This is where we talk about motorcycles and what makes them great. Topics on this show are constantly changing, but the one thing that remains is two-wheeled fun. In this episode, we are going to talk about what we think are the best looking motorcycles of all time, modern, old, and then we're going to talk about like what we don't like as well. So it's going to be a decisive episode, I think. But before we get into it, let's make some introductions. We got Adam Wahid, editor. We have got our associate editor, Evan Allen, and you've got myself, executive editor, Justin Dawes. As we do with every episode, we talk about what we're riding before we get into the meat of the show. So let's find out what Adam's been riding this week.
This past week, we rode the Yamaha YZF-R9 2025. So, yeah, that was really fun, and it's a nice bike, and I think Yamaha's going to do really well with that model here in the United States.
I think it's probably one of the more anticipated models for 2025 with, it's kind of like a rebirth of sport bikes in a way. It's a little maybe not as hard edged as a full-on leader bike or a super sport, but I think it makes sense right now, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what Yamaha Motor USA was saying, it's pretty evident that no one really wants the hardcore sport bikes anymore. Well, they still want the hardcore, but not as much as the old days. And they're trying to make a motorcycle that's just more affordable and a little bit of a stepping stone between, their twin cylinder R7 and their 4-cylinder R1. So yeah, it's a neat bike. It's certainly not going to be for everyone, but it is going to fit the mark for a lot of people in America. It's a neat bike.
Nice. So I have a few questions about it, just out of my own personal curiosity. But in terms of like ergos, are the bars like really low, like a track bike, or are they like a little more comfortable? Like, what's the ergos like? Can you ride it on the street, or is it still going to be a torture rack?
Yeah, no. It's definitely more comfortable than like a YZF-R6 or YZF-R1. The seat height is significantly lower. The seat is more narrow. So if you're a person of shorter stature, you're going to have an easier time putting both feet on the ground. It does have clip-on style handlebar, but it's not quite as high as the YZF-R7. That was a little bit wimpy in my opinion, but it's also not quite as low as a YZF-R1. So it kind of splits the difference between that. So, you can get in the race tuck position and the windscreen's nice and tall, which is great. But yet when you're in the race tuck position, it definitely feels like it should. But at the same time, I would think that on the street, we didn't get to ride it on the street, but I bet you anything on the street is probably going to be pretty comfortable just because the ergonomics aren't as aggressive as the R1 or R6. So honestly, I think Yamaha did a good job of, flirting those two segments, comfort on the street and, racetrack prowess, where, the outgoing R6 and the R1, the R1's very uncomfortable on the street. That's an uncomfortable bike to ride on the street. So I think the R9 is going to do really well for them. I think they did a really good job. I'm actually surprised that other manufacturers aren't, kind of jumping on that. I mean, they're jumping on that bandwagon, but not quite to that extent,
Right, because you look at like let's say like a Suzuki GSX-8R sport bike, but much milder in terms of aggressiveness, engine power, suspension components, quite a bit different, lower spec, right?
Yeah, I mean, just more mellow. I mean, that bike's really awesome too, but that's a little bit more street-ish than the R9. Not saying the R9 isn't street-ish, but it's just a little bit more. So it's cool that, Yamaha still kind of infused its R bike ethos in this bike, without it being too crazy, but not too wimpy. They're going to do really good with that bike. I can't really overemphasize how many of those units they're going to sell.
Nice.
And it really looks cool. Like just looking at it, looking at it, I'm just like, wow, that bike looks cool. Like that's a sick looking bike. Even Evan commented, he's like, I want to get one of those bikes. I really like it. And it's just like, that's exactly the audience that Yamaha Motor USA is going after, is that late 20s person, so having Evan say that is just goes to show you that they totally hit the mark.
Yeah.
Yeah. Talking about good looking bikes. when I saw that thing first get announced. I was like, oh, especially in the white and red. Yeah, it's got the little
Yeah,
wing. I was like,
totally.
I want to get on one of those.
Yeah, and it doesn't look like a wimpy bike. Like when you see it,
No.
like it looks like a racy big bike. It doesn't look wimpy like, like I mean, bad example, but like a Ninja 400. You can see like when you watch a Ninja 400 go by, you're like, "Oh, that bike looks small." Like it just looks small.
Mm-hmm.
It's only got one front disc brake. It just looks wimpy. Where this thing looks like a,
Legit.
a legit bike. Yep.
Yeah.
Nice. Right on. Well, looking forward to your review on Motorcyclist and your review video. So, where you can get way more info than what we talk about here, but I think that's a pretty good primer for Adam's review. So, Evan, what about you? What did you ride? What you got going on?
I've been messing around on the Honda Dax. We got one of those a week or
Oh,
so ago. And
nice.
yeah, so we got a Trail 125 too that we got some stuff coming up on. But yeah, was spinning some laps around the parking lot and out to lunch on the Dax. And yeah, it's fun. I mean, real similar to all of that mini moto platform that Honda has with I think the Grom and the 125 and the Super Cub. But yeah, that thing, I mean, talking about good looking bikes when it came in, looks really cool. It's got that vintage look, and that like kind of like frame design is really cool. It's so
Yeah, it's a cool little model. So, I'm looking forward to seeing what you think about that thing. And just real quick, would you rather have the Dax, a Monkey, or a CT 125?
I think I would honestly, I think I would go with the Grom, but between those three, I think I would go with the Monkey.
Okay.
I think the Monkey get a little kind of off-roady with it, not as much as the Trail, but I really like the looks of the Monkey with the dual shocks, the outboard shocks, and so.
Okay, cool. Well, when this comes out, I will be on track on Ducati Street Fighter V4. So that's what I'm riding right at this moment. As you're watching this, I am turning laps
Nice.
In Almeria, Spain on Street Fighter V4. I'm really excited to try that bike. I'm expecting that we'll be riding the S model. Ducati always plies you with the highest spec model to test always. So, 200 horsepower naked bike that's basically a Panigale without the fairing and maybe a little bit more comfortable ergos. It's going to be intense. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah,
So
that bike's sweet.
It'll be fun.
When we had one at the office, was that last year or 2 years ago? The SP2.
Yeah,
we did it. Yeah, it was. It's got like some technology that's trickled down from MotoGP. Like that thing is in the naked bike category. Like, woo.
Oh, it's gnarly. I wouldn't. Talking about good looking, I don't know if it's traditionally good looking, but the look has an intent to it. Like you look at it and you know what that bike is about, with all its winglets and carbon fiber and the stance and stuff. You go, oh, okay, yeah, I know what that bike's about, right?
Yeah, it screams performance.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So great. Well, let's talk about what makes a photogenic motorcycle. Let's get off with like our personal criteria of what we think looks good. Like, where does it start with you guys? Does it start with like styling features and shapes? Is it color and graphics? Like, what is it?
Yeah, I think for me, it's kind of the shape, like almost the wheels and the fenders and like the tank through the seat and the subframe are the first things that catch my eye.
Yeah, I agree. Like the shapes for sure, I mean, you just talked about it, Justin, the Ducati Street Fighter V4, that has a very interesting shape. You definitely know it's something special and something aggressive when you look at it. And that's the one thing that, Ducati has always done a really good job of having these shapes, having these styling attributes where you know it's a Ducati, you know what it's for. It's something that they've always done really well at, So yeah, I think style or shapes is a big thing with, what makes a motorcycle good looking or not.
Mm-hmm. So like, yeah, shapes are also, I mean, that's what styling is, and that's what looks is, mainly the shape, but it's odd that like you can have two bikes that have very, very similar overall shapes, right? So you look at, we'll say, the Ducati that we brought up, right? And then you compare that to another naked bike like Triumph Speed 1200 RS, right? And they have, if you just put the silhouette, they're very similar, but the good looking factor between the two, to me, is vastly different. And it not only comes down to kind of that shape, but it also comes down to the the details, the shapes, not the overall shape, but like what they do in those overall shapes, right? And you look at the Ducati, it's very, the form follows the function absolutely, but on the Triumph, the form doesn't follow the function exactly, and it's more classically, it's smoother and it's cleaner,
Yeah.
and it's just overall maybe a better looking motorcycle. And but the profiles are almost identical, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I wish you would have picked the Triumph Speed Triple 1050, because
yeah,
that thing, if you said they were similar, you could totally maybe refute that, because
yeah,
the Speed Triple has those big appendage like headlights sticking off the front end. But yeah,
yeah, the total 1050, yeah. So
yeah,
they're they've definitely modernized the Speed Triple quite a bit. I think it's a great looking bike overall, but it's nowhere near the best looking bike in the Triumph lineup, right? I mean, they have so many insanely good looking bikes, which we'll talk about here in a minute. But color and graphics go a long way for looks. I mean, like you said, like the R9, the white and red one, looks sick. I mean, the blue one looks great too, but it doesn't have the same thing going for it that the red and white one does.
yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, on that note too, like you've seen it, where we've seen old motorcycles like Suzuki's GSXR 600, which has been unchanged for whatever 15, 16 years. And like every few years they'll come out with like a new graphics package, like just a new graphics package, put some like highlights on the wheels and just some different things. And all of a sudden that bike that hasn't changed in 15, 16 years goes from like, that thing's kind of, lame looking, to wow, that thing looks different now. It's really crazy what graphics and accent colors can do to a motorcycle, to make it look more current. Bold new graphics, like that was it's a joke, but it's also a true statement.
True
If
statement.
done well. If done well.
Bold new graphics have sold a lot of motorcycles.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's absolutely clear that makes a difference. And then, there's something, I guess you would call the X factor, right? It's just, sometimes there's just a bike and you can't put your finger on it why it looks good, but it just does, right?
Yeah. I think that's kind of the preference. Like, everyone has their own idea of what looks good, and some things that kind of tickle your fancy might not for someone else. And because there's some bikes that probably people think are ugly that I really like. Like, I think just a classic XR 650L is just I love the look of just a classic dual sport like that. And so,
I mean, speaking of bikes with new graphics, that XR 650L with the white and the black wheels, like all of a sudden it looks cool again. Like, it makes no sense to me.
Yeah,
totally.
There's a couple graphics packages on that bike over the years that have made it look pretty sick. There was the years, I don't remember, it was probably early 2000s. They had like this big XR logo with like red and black kind of slashes behind it, and it was the same graphics that like the Supercross race team was using, and that really made it look cool for a little while too. Then that got dated, so
wasn't that the Woody Woodpecker era, like the Woody Woodpecker era?
No, it was. I can't remember if it was before or after, but it was maybe before that. just slightly before that. So I'm talking like early 2000s. I think Woody Woodpecker was like 2004, 2005 ish.
Yeah. Yep.
So
Yeah, I think the one you're talking about, Justin, I feel like Johnny Campbell had similar graphics at one point in Baja.
That's what I'm thinking in my head is I see that shot of Johnny Campbell rolling through the desert at sunset, and sick.
Yeah. So anyway, there's just bikes that sometimes you just, for some reason, they just look great and you can't explain why. And those bikes hit everyone different. And some people may think something looks great and other people may not. So the X Factor bikes can be more polarizing or divisive, right? So, but let's get into talking about some bikes. We're going to start with classic or bikes from the past that look great. And we're going to start right here in good old America and talk about American bikes. So, it's pretty obvious where the list goes in terms of manufacturers, Harley Davidson, Indian. But I think I think we've found some bikes that clearly are great looking motorcycles and set the tone basically for the design language for these two manufacturers all the way up until now for the most part, right? So first one, I think Harley Davidson's WL45. So 1937 is when it came out. It's the classic cruiser shape. Like it's kind of defined cruiser shape from that point on, right? It's got the big kind of teardrop tank and the skirted fenders and the fat tires and low and long. It's just, you look at it and you go, yeah, I know that's a Harley.
Yeah.
I mean, you really stated it. I mean, it's kind of crazy when you think about that, but it's like that. Yeah, that model set the tone for what all cruisers were to become. Whether it's an American cruiser, the Japanese cruiser, or whatever, they all were seeking to go after that shape. And yeah, that shape's changed over the years, obviously, for Harley Davidson. But has it? Has it really changed?
I mean, overall, it's still there, right? And you ask someone to draw a cruiser, and you're going to get something fairly similar to that bike most of the time.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Yeah.
Big fenders, a swoop back handlebar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, big bar.
Like you said, the tank, that teardrop gets tighter by the seat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I mean, it's so popular that Harley Davidson, is bringing that thing back, or they brought it back for this last year. Not that exact model, but the Hydroglide, which we'll get to in a second.
Yeah. Like, so let's just get to the Hydroglide of the 50s. Like that right there, you can see that shape in modern Harleys right now very, very clearly. And it's a great looking bike. You look at it. Actually, my friend has one. He's got a 51 that he like rides all the time. Starts on one kick. Wow. It's just awesome. It's like a green color but I mean, it's got like all those touches that you still see on some, Harley cruisers, like the big fenders, the chrome trim around the front of the fender, the seat shape, it's there, man.
Classic Harley. Yeah, and manufacturers have copied them. Like even with the Suzuki, they have the Boulevard, I think it's called, that looks like it would be a rip off of one of these.
Yeah, Kawasaki's Vulcans back in the day, like, they had like the Vulcan, I think it was probably the 15, 16, I don't remember. Their big bore before they had the 2000, the Vulcan 2000, which was completely silly looking. That was probably one of the ugliest bikes I remember, but they did it up, and so that style has been copied forever, and it's classic, it, and you can't hate on it. You just can't, right?
Yeah, I feel like it'll never go out of style.
Never.
Like a classic car, like no matter, even if you're not into cars, if just about anyone sees a 50s Bel Air coming down the street or something, and you're like, that's cool. Look at that.
Totally. Yeah, exactly.
I agree. Yep. So, and then form following function, XR 750 flat tracker. I mean,
Sick.
just such a cool looking motorcycle, right? But for the other reason, like you look at it and you go, it's beautiful because you know the intent of that motorcycle and what it's going to do.
Yeah. Those are good looking motorcycles. It's crazy what a reign they had in that AMA flat track series for so many decades. And I mean, not only did it look super sick, but it, had the muscle to back up its good looks, which isn't always the case,
Yeah, I mean, it constantly evolved through the years, with different cylinder head designs and cylinders and all this stuff, but it never, like the overall shape of the bike never really changed because it was spot on for what it needed to do, but it just looks so damn good doing what it needed to do. So
yeah, awesome bike. It was kind of unfortunate that the successor to that really didn't really follow in its footsteps, unfortunately.
Definitely not. No. Yeah. And then even, we're going to talk about Indian. Let's talk about Indian. The FTR, kind of a cool looking bike, but doesn't have the style chops as the XR did. Right.
I don't know. The old ones were, I mean, I guess you could say that Indian definitely didn't set the tone like Harley Davidson did, at least not in my opinion, but they were still cool and just a little bit different,
Yeah, well, I'm talking about the new FTR flat track race bike.
I'm sorry.
Compared to the XR. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like, doesn't have it's cool looking, but you go, oh, that's cool because of all the cool parts on it. But the shape of it it's not the same as an XR.
But I would say the new FTR, the now retired FTR, was cooler looking than the new Harley Davidson. So you compare the XTR to the XR 750 original Harley Davidson. But then when you put that now retired FTR against the now retired Harley Davidson upgrade, in my opinion, the Indian motorcycle was better looking, which is kind of crazy, Yeah,
I agree. I think the FTR race bike looks sweet. Like I just said.
Yeah, but not quite as sweet as the original XR, correct?
Yeah, exactly. As the XR. Yeah. So let's talk about Indian then. Like, just like Harley set the tone, Indian set styling for cruisers in a way as well. Like, like you look at the Scout from the 30s, you have that like long, narrow tank. Like, that's not a style you see very much anymore, except for in a lot of customs. You see a lot of custom motorcycles that go back to that style because it has this very long, narrow, kind of svelte shape to it, So it makes the bike look fast, even though it's a 1930s, V twin. It truly isn't super fast, but it's a good looking. It's still a good looking bike, And it's still
solo seat looks really good.
Yep.
Yeah, spoked wheels. I always love the look of spoked wheels. And
and then you go. Yeah, go ahead, Adam. Sorry.
Oh, it's just crazy how we were talking about, two shapes can be kind of similar yet different, but that's like a good example of something that, silhouette wise is roughly the same. But then when you look at them up close, they're different, but it's almost hard to describe. You have to be like looking at them, back and forth to be able to describe that difference. And it's cool that they have their own little design language that, especially Indian, they both still follow it to this day.
Yeah, especially you go to the 50s. I mean, you do have the new Scouts and all that stuff, and they're a riff on the 1930s, but they're not quite there, right? You know what I mean? Like, you can see a very, very slight resemblance to those bikes, but I wouldn't say that the Scouts are particularly
well said.
Good looking motorcycles, and they're nice riding motorcycles, but I wouldn't say they're particularly good looking when you compare them to some other cruisers. But you look at a Chief from the 50s, and that thing is immediately classic, skirted fenders, and that, like, Indian still follows that design language today. You know what I mean? They used to have that shape with the Chiefs that, hey, yep, there's a line right there, and then, the front fender marker light on a 50s Chief is like iconic for Indian, like, the war bonnet, that thing is just a rad piece of, not quite Art Deco design, but close, and, like when, going back to Kawasaki and talking about odd styling choices for cruisers, I mean, they just ripped off the Chief 50 style with what was that called? The Vulcan.
The Vaquero or something.
No, that was the Vaquero was the big bagger. They had the one that looked like an Indian, had skirted fenders. It was like the red. It was like a riff on like an Indian red color. It was very, very much like, hey, look at this. We want this to look exactly like a 50s Indian. And how come I can't remember the name of it all of a sudden?
There's been lots of Japanese cruisers over the decades that have, tried to copy, what Harley Davidson and Indian have done over the, decades. But, and they certainly make really nice bikes. But the problem is they never really sold. I mean, they did for a while, but not in the numbers that their American counterparts did,
Yeah. Oh, it was called the Drifter, the Kawasaki Drifter. That's what it was called. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
I remember that bike quite well. I was working at Kawasaki at the time and went to the press launch for that thing. Anyway, yeah, the thing is that the Japanese building their cruisers, they just miss it just ever so slightly. It's just never quite the same as an American cruiser, and so they're not good looking, but they have their own look that they did really well, so which we'll talk about in a second. But let's get to some like European bikes. What comes to mind off the bat for you guys?
Just the old school?
Yeah, old school European bikes.
I mean, just like that original Ducati 750 Super Sport from, the 70s. That thing's got an iconic look, and that thing really kind of put Ducati on the map in the United States a little bit,
Absolutely did. Yeah. Yeah. You talk about Cycle magazine and their Daytona race bike project with one, like it really put Ducati on the map in the US with that 750 Super Sport, and then they had the like the 750 Super Sport didn't have a fairing on at the time and all, but it had this really awesome, exotic shape for the day. But you look at it now and it's still very beautiful. And there's modern ish variants of that Ducati did over the years. Like, you look at like, like the scramblers, there's some scramblers that kind of get that vibe going a little bit. And, there's just a lot that came out of that, and then you had what I think is one of the coolest looking Ducatis ever is the 750 Imola, the race bike, that they showed up at Imola with a truck full of these bikes that were silver. They weren't Ducati red. There wasn't Ducati red yet. Like, the colors were other colors, and, they just kicked ass. And, those bikes are truly beautiful looking motorcycles, that silver with a, light blue, turquoise blue accent colors on them.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but that silver has some flake in it too, I think.
It's got like some mega flake, like almost almost bass boat flake. Yeah. And like the fuel tanks on those bikes were fiberglass. They weren't even metal, and they had like a clear, not clear, but a translucent space so you could see how much fuel was in the tank. And, it was, they're very, very, very special bikes. And actually one of our contributors, John Stein, he owns one. He owns
That's so cool.
He owns Paul Smart's if I'm correct, his 750 Mola practice bike, like his second
Wow.
bike, and
Wow.
he rides it. He doesn't ride it as much as he used to, because man, if you crash that thing, it's over. Like you're throwing away history,
Yeah.
lots of money, but also history. So,
Belongs in a museum.
yeah. So, it's a beautiful looking bike, but then you can kind of go back, like, you know, like we could almost say classics are like in like the 2000s now. It's almost 30 years ago,
Yeah.
so you could talk about a little bit earlier than that, like 900 Super Sports. Hoyer has one in the office.
Yeah.
It's
Those are good looking bikes.
it's just classically good looking. You have a big, nice, flowing fairing. You got Ducati red. You got a tail section that is very kind of sporty and all kind of boxed out. It's just a classic sport bike shape, and it's held its beauty over the years. It's aged nicely.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
So
Kind of a timeless look.
yeah, but then there's the Ducati, the best looking Ducati, which is, we all know it. Somebody say it,
Yeah.
so I don't have to. What is it?
916, the 916. Yeah, everyone's favorite bike, or mostly everyone's.
Mostly everyone's bike. It's Massimo Tamburini's masterpiece. That's the bike. When I was younger, I had one up. I had a poster of it. I think it was in the garage. I had a friend that had it in the wall of his house. Like, it was like, if you're a motorcycle guy, instead of having a poster of a Lamborghini when we were kids, or a Ferrari on the wall, you had a 916 on the wall, right?
Yeah,
it's just
in the crate with the light leaking in. Remember that poster?
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. It had these. It's got that pointy front end with the the two headlights, and it's got the dual tail lights with the exhausts coming out the back that sit up underneath. It just, man, it's as classic as a Ferrari Testarossa, or a Lamborghini Countach. Like, it is iconic without a doubt.
Yeah, and it set the design language for sport bikes for decades after that.
Forever. Yeah. I mean, like, and everyone was, everyone started moving their exhaust pipes down from the bottom up underneath the tail. Now it's gone back the other way, because it's better for handling to have it down low. But for a while, everyone was putting them up high, because Tamburini did it, and the 916 was so awesome, everyone had to do it.
Yeah.
So I remember I was actually working at Kawasaki, in the late 90s. I was young, and there was a Japanese guy that was, from Kawasaki Japan, that was working in the US, and he went and bought a 916. Like, he had it like hidden in a corner at Kawasaki with the cover over it, so no one would get mad, but everyone would always go over and like sneak peeks at it, and he would work on it after hours, and he was, like, always making sure it was perfect. And then he took it back to Japan with him when he went back. But you just can't deny how good that bike looks. Cannot.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah.
Yep. So what about BMW? There's some BMWs that are really, really good bikes. I think the R32 is iconic BMW.
That's iconic.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. It's black, the black with the white pinstriping. It's just, man, it's a good looking motorcycle.
Yeah, that frame they have, I forget what the eye loop frame, I think they call it, the double eye loop. And it's crazy to me, because that R18 Cruiser, love it or hate it, the styling of that R18 Cruiser, at least in my opinion, all those lines are in that R32. It's so sick.
Absolutely.
It's so sick that you can have a new cruiser that literally looks like a 1932 bike. I trip out over it every time I look at it.
Yeah, I mean, the R18 is massively bigger than the R32, but it's got the look and it's got the lines, and I've always thought the R18 looks great. So, and then you've got, Hans Muth. He's done some big things back in the day in terms of designing bikes, and the R90S, putting the fairing on a R9, on an R90, that thing is sick looking.
Yeah, I love the look of that, and that paint, like sunburst,
yeah,
like a creamsicle or something. I don't know, but yeah, it looks.
Yeah,
I love the look of that thing.
Yeah, and that's a bike that has stood the test of time. But I will say that when I was in high school, my shop teacher, my junior high wood shop teacher had one, and he would ride it, and I would look at it, and I was like, that thing is dumb. What a nerd. I didn't get it, and I think it's a bike design that it speaks to someone that is grown up. We'll put it that way, right? Like it's not great looking to everybody, but it is beautiful to people that are grown up and have a sophisticated sense of style, perhaps.
And I think BMW, they have this what is it, the R12S? Is that kind of a kind of like it's
they riff on
like
it.
that one? It's a riff.
Yep.
Okay, yeah.
Yep.
Because that thing looks amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And they totally look similar, and I love the fairing and
Yep, absolutely. So we have to mention this motorcycle, or Mark Hoyer will fire all three of us. And that's a Norton Commando. It's very classic cool Norton, parallel. Like the thing just looks, the engine shape, what the bike is, like it just looks right for that time period. Like it is right. 70s, it just looks perfect. And
the exhaust that swoop back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So definitely Norton Commando is on the list for European, British good looking bikes for sure.
What a cool name too.
Yeah. Super cool name. I think the 70s had a great time of like naming motorcycles. You had like the Commander, and then you had like, you had like weird names too. Like, Hodaka had like the Combat Wombat, and the Super Rat, and like he had all these, like it was just the 70s had just crazy names, but Commando is just a great name still. So
yeah. And they're always talking about coming back, sort of, and then not, and then coming back, and then not, exactly. Coming back.
Yep. So let's talk about some Japanese bikes real quick. We're getting real deep in the weeds here, but Honda CBs, especially CB400, beautiful motorcycle, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And even to this day, I mean,
yep.
And even fast forward to this day, Honda's, still pulling design features on its new, Neo Sports Cafe bikes from that, so it's not just, we were talking about Harley Davidson, and Indian motorcycle company doing it, but the Japanese companies also have a great history, and they're pulling from it as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Kind of don't forget where you came from.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yep. Like the head pipes on that bike are like art. How they come off and then they come down the side, and they kind of do this like waterfall cascade when it goes 4 into 1. It's such a cool shape. Really cool shape.
Yeah. The symmetrical pipes are sick. They're just this super awesome design feature of that bike that instantly lets you know what it is.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I'll say like this is a personal one for me, but I think you guys will probably agree too, is I guess it's a classic now because it was from 1992, so that's 33 years ago. Like it's old. It's before Evan was born.
Yeah.
That's a CBR 900 RR.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those things, they still look pretty cool.
They
even today.
Really, really good. They still look.
Yeah.
You park that thing next to a Fireblade RRR. It looks better than that. It looks so much better than that motorcycle.
Yeah. We're talking about the Ducati 916 setting design language. Well, the 900R also set design language for the sport bike category for many, many, many years.
It really did. Kind of a larger front fairing area with big, huge headlights. Like that was a look for a while. And I'll say that like Suzuki's GSX-R 750, 1985, it had big round headlights too, but that one is cool looking because it has so much like 80s flair to it.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
does. Yeah.
The proportions are kind of ridiculous, but it also, you look at it and you go like, yep, I want one of those immediately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's why the 900RR was so cool, because like it took that concept and then, it you said like the Suzuki, it was kind of like large and big looking. Well, the 900RR was small looking. Like, I mean,
Mhm.
it had a nice stance, but it was small, compact, big,
Mhm.
beefy frame.
Yeah.
So it took that stuff into a more athletic tone.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
And that's what sport
Um,
bikes are about, is athleticism, so it
Mhm.
totally made sense.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
But it's funny, I remember as a kid, the first time I saw a GSX-R 750, an 85 GSX-R 750, we were on a road trip with my family in Oregon, and we went over this river. So maybe it was Washington, like Oregon to Washington or something. And on the other side, there was 4 of them parked together, like brand new. These guys just all bought them. And I just looked at that thing. And it was just like, look at that. What is that? Like blew my mind as at that point, I was 9 years old. I was just like, as a 9-year-old, I was like, that's the most insane thing I've ever seen in my life.
I want one.
Yeah. My dad had a Yamaha FJ 1100, and compared to his FJ, that thing was so small, so compact, so aggressive looking. His FJ just looked like this like dumb boat. And I was like, Dad, you got to get one of those. Get rid of that other thing, So,
Yeah.
and we can't leave the subject of Suzuki without talking about the Katana.
Yeah.
The OG Katana. Another
Hans
Muth.
Muth. Yeah,
Another
Hans
Hans
Muth
Muth.
thing.
But it's good looking because it's ugly.
Yeah,
If that
kind of like a
makes sense.
DeLorean.
Right? Like it's got all these really sharp angles, and he took shapes that you wouldn't think are classically good looking, because it's not swooping and it's not smooth. It's very angular and and but man, it's beautiful because it's unconventional and ugly in a good way.
I like the Hans Muth nip tucked nose, same with
Mhm.
that BMW we spoke about. He had that nip tucked nose, and I think that's really neat.
Mhm.
It's almost kind of crazy too, because like it almost like it's like the ADV bikes, with their beaks. They kind of like almost kind of copied that a little bit, sort of.
In a way.
It's just it's just like kind of crazy to me how these styling attributes can not only span different manufacturers, but now different categories.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So let's we're gonna get into modern bikes. We're running already at like 40 something minutes, so we got to make up some time. So we're not going to talk about a ton of modern models. I think overall motorcycles in the modern age have become almost all very good looking for the most part. There's very few that you go, oh God, when you see it, right? So let's talk about, we talked about Indian, their bikes now, great looking motorcycles, but I think the best looking FTR is probably the best looking Indian, and it's being discontinued, unfortunately. But it's just kind of a, flat tracker ish. They took a chance, and it was a great looking motorcycle, but it's maybe just not what American cruiser buyers are looking for, unfortunately.
Yeah, I thought for sure that street tracker class was going to be a thing in like 2019, and it just never became a thing. And yeah, that bike was a good looking bike, and yeah, it's kind of sad to see it go, but the Americans spoke with their wallets and they didn't want it, so that's how it goes.
Yep.
I will say the 101 Scout is pretty sharp looking too.
Yeah, it is.
We got one of those at the office. Yeah.
But it's sharp looking not because of the shape of the bike, but the take on it, making it very kind of racy and badass, right?
Yeah, it's like a cruiser with with race influence, with an inverted fork and fully adjustable and big Brembos, and yeah, it looks like you think I want to go fast on that thing.
Yeah, exactly. So Harley Davidson, like there's, like Harley Davidsons classically are still great looking. They have really good paint and finish, and the lines are classic and all that stuff. But some catch the eye more than others. And, I haven't grown into the new glides as much, like the fairing, like the Road Glides, Shark Nose fairing is, I think it has too many like LED headlight modern ish to it. Same with the Street Glide, but then you look at something like the Lowrider, the ST, like that thing looks sick.
Yeah.
That's a good looking soft tail motorcycle.
Yeah, totally. And I feel like people my age, that's like what I want to be on a Harley. They want to be on a Harley that looks like that. They don't want to be on a Road Glide or a Street Glide. They want something that, looks biker boy.
I still really like the Heritage Classic. In my opinion, that's still the best looking Harley. Yeah. I love the look of that bike too.
That is a very, very good looking bike because it's classic and
but modern,
but classic. Yeah, I know. Mm-hmm. But I mean, like someone that's completely uninformed in Harleys will walk up to you on that bike.
They'll know what it is. Yeah,
they'll know it's a Harley, but they'll be like, "Man, what year is that? That thing's so clean." And you're like, "Well, it's a 2024." And they're like, "What?"
Yeah.
So
we were at a bike rally like this summer, and some guy had a new Harley Davidson. I think a Heritage Classic actually. And I'm looking at it. I'm like, "Oh, that's nice. Is that like a 2016?" And he's like, "No, man, it's a 2024." He kind of got mad, but like, I don't know. It looked modern but classic, and I wasn't bagging on his bike being 20 years or 10 years old. It just
Yeah, I mean, well, that there you go. Like Harley styling, it's not huge departures all the way back from, like we said, the Hydroglide and the XL, all those bikes. Like it's just that the WL that's just it's what Harley is, and that's how they do their business. So, let's talk about some European bikes real fast. What about MV Agusta?
I like the look of their bikes. Not all of them. I don't like the look of what's their like sport touring, the Veloce.
Yeah, okay.
That one I don't love the look of.
But how about the Super Veloce? Like that thing is.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got this retro style. It's been voted the most beautiful bike at EICMA when they announced it. I think that bike is one of the best looking bikes, modern motorcycles you can look at.
Yeah.
I think the 1000 series Oro isn't as good as the 800. I think the 800 has it spot on. And I think they went a little too racy, gnarly with the 1000. The paint is a little more racy looking compared to the classic, understated but beautiful streamlined design of the 800.
I mean, MV Agusta definitely has design language all their own, and they've been using it for quite some time.
That they have. So, and then you've got, people would say like Ducati, like the whole line, they're all pretty good looking motorcycles, but I think there's some standouts, and it's not their super bikes. I think that the Scramblers, they got style for days, man. And they have a classic shape that is good looking, that catches everybody's eye.
Yeah. The desert sled. I always loved when they had the desert sled when it came out. Uh-huh. I remember just like kind of just pictured myself going through the desert in some like work boots and old leather work gloves, just with a bandana on and being like,
like had good proportions.
Yeah, really good proportions. Yep.
It's almost like they kind of copied Triumph, during the Steve McQueen era, but they, Triumph couldn't really figure it out. I mean, they had it obviously, but then they kind of lost it, and then Ducati reinvented it for them.
Yeah.
But now Triumph's back, and they have a modern take now too. But it's kind of crazy how things work.
Triumph, like we said, we talked about the Speed Triple 1200 RS, good looking bike, but there's some of their modern classics, man. They're just stunners.
Yeah. The
Speed Twin.
It's my
Speed
favorite.
Twins. 1200, right? Speed
Yeah,
Twin
the Speed Twin
1200.
1200 is absolutely just one of my, as far as modern bikes, my favorite looking bike.
Mhm.
It's something I think if I was super rich, I'd want one to ride and one to park in the living room.
Nice.
So, yeah.
No, yeah, they're great looking motorcycles, and the beauty of a Triumph is the fit and finish. You get close up on that bike, and it's awesome. You look at the paint, you look at the hardware, you look at the switch gear, you look at the details on that bike are, that's where they blow a lot of other manufacturers out of the water, is just on their fit and finish and how nicely the bikes are put together.
Yeah.
Makes them beautiful, best looking bikes, especially when you're up close, BMW has, I think, reinvented its look, and it's good now. The asymmetrical days, with like the big headlight on one side and a little headlight on the other side, like, man, they made some ugly looking motorcycles. They went from like really good classic to like this just mess, and now they're back. Like, I think especially the M1000 RR, man, that's an insane looking motorcycle.
Yeah.
Yeah, like awesome.
I did always like the odd looking headlight, the asymmetrical headlight on like the S1000 RR, and on
it wasn't terrible.
Yeah.
Oh, I hated it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's funny because that bike, and then also we're talking about MV Agusta. I can't remember which one it was, but back in the day when I was a kid, going to a superbike test with my dad just to hang out, and those were the two bikes that I remember because of their look.
The F4.
Yeah, that was it. F4. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yep. So, I think that, like I said, the M1000 RR it's aggressive, just like Ducatis are aggressive, but it's got this softness to the edges, like where like it goes into the air intake, and it goes like it has this like the edges aren't as sharp, and it makes it look really, really nice. And then you've got the M paint job on it that just brings it up to another level.
Carbon, yeah. It's almost like they didn't try as hard. Like they made something look really awesome and racy and sharp, but yeah, some more round, smooth surfaces that, yeah.
Yep. So, what about real quick, a couple Japanese ones, and then we'll get into like we'll each go over like something that's ugly, and then we'll get to our favorites, and we'll get out of here. So, give me some Japanese stuff that you think looks good.
Some current stuff?
Yeah.
R1, R bikes.
Yeah.
Especially the new, all of them, like the new 2025 R3, 2025 R7, R9, R1 now with its updated wings. Like that,
Yeah.
I mean, those bikes that R bikes is like totally a cool thing. And,
Yeah, I agree. The R7, the new colorway they came out with, or paint job for 2025, like that thing looks awesome.
Yeah.
I missed it, but so. good to know,
Yeah.
Good looking bikes for sure. Okay. What about you, Adam? I mean, Evan.
For Japanese bikes, I would say, I really like the Neo Classic that Honda has going, like with the was it the 650, the CB 650R, I believe they call it, and then even like the big one, the black edition, the CB, the 1000. Yeah, both of those, like a modern take with some classic sort of. Yeah, I dig those, and Husqvarna's got that going too a little bit. I know they're not Japanese, but something that's modern looking, but tasteful.
Okay. Yeah, I agree.
Nice. Let's get into some bikes that we think are not attractive. You know what? We're gonna go to best looking personally, and then best looking or worst looking of all time personally, and then we'll close it with that. So, I'm gonna give Adam first crack at all time best looking.
Oh, the all-time best looking, obviously, you and I just are going to completely agree. The Ducati 916,
100%. Absolutely.
Yeah, probably the 90. If you really wanted to break it down by year or two, the 96 or 97. That is literally the one you want. Like,
yes,
you want a 96 or 97. Like, that thing is just like, they're just so sick. And
perfection.
I mean, what a timeless style. Just, that bike will never not look cool to me.
Never.
So
Yeah,
I would say that's the best looking bike.
Forever at the top of the list. Absolutely. Forever at the top.
It's gotta be 96 or 97.
Yeah, for sure. What about you, Evan? What's your thoughts on best looking?
Okay.
Personally,
I just have always loved the Yamaha DT1 look, with having just an off-road background, and there's a picture of one on the wall here at the office, just like a 3/4 rear shot. It's just always been a motorcycle. I love the lines, like the seat into the tank. It's simple.
Just flat?
Yeah, it's just flat, simple, especially with like a knobby tire on it. It just is a bike I look at and makes me want to go. It reminds me of like On Any Sunday. It just makes me want to go just kick up some dust with some buddies out in the desert.
Yeah, cool. I mean, it's a good looking shape. I mean, it's no 916, but okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I will give a bonus with the Speed Twin 1200.
Okay.
As a modern bike, because I just have always loved those.
Yeah, I'll give you a high five on that one. That's a great looking motorcycle. It's a great riding motorcycle too, which I think actually ups its looks.
Totally.
Because you get off of it and you look at it and you go, man, it's so good. Because that bike's cool because you could ride it to a cafe for coffee. You could go out to dinner on the bike, and you could go rip the canyons up, and it's excellent in all those places.
Yeah, it really is.
You know what I mean? And it doesn't look out of place in any of those places.
Yeah.
It really does do that. So I'm gonna go first on all-time worst looking. This thing is just funky, and every time I look at it, it throws me off, and it's just got these weird, like, intersecting curved round shapes, and that's Aprilia's Moto 6.5. Man, they tried too dang hard.
Yeah.
I think the designer's name on that one was Philippe Stark, I think was his name, and he just lost the plot. Like, I think he had a good idea, but he went too dang far with it. It's just it's got all these intersecting curves on it that just makes it look like someone took a Nautilus shell and broke it and tried to put it back together.
Yeah, that one's goofy looking. I actually kind of like it in like an oddball way.
Me too.
Weird.
Me too. Yeah. Definitely has a weird egg shape going on, though.
Yeah. So that's my worst looking motorcycle. What about you, Adam?
Mine is I think it can be definitively said for me. I've always not liked the looks of this bike, but the 2016 Suzuki GSX S 1000F. If you guys can recall what that thing looks like.
Yeah, it was just
an ugly bike.
It was like lackluster. Like, it was like a half-assed styling attempt. Like, they were like, it has to look like a sport tour, and they went, well, okay, not good enough, right? Like, it's just very
looks
odd.
Like an ugly minivan. Like an ugly minivan. It's just like, what? Like, why would you make a bike so disgusting looking? It's no wonder that bike only stayed in the U.S. model lineup for a very short duration.
Very short duration. Yeah, I will agree. I mean, but Suzuki's had misses over the years. I mean, they've had some amazing bikes, like we talked about, Katana, GSXR 750. But you look at like a late 90s Katana. Oh, when they changed Katana to this sport, like a low end sport bike, and they put those full fairings on, those were ugly. They were so sad.
I've always had an affinity for Suzuki Katana, so I take that personally. But
really,
I totally agree. Like, the worst Suzuki Katanas were, like, if you remember, like 04 or 05.
Yeah, okay,
Like, oh my God, those were hideous.
Yes.
So yeah. Suzuki is one manufacturer who's gotten it wrong a lot, but honestly, now they're kind of setting a new design language, and they're doing pretty good.
The stuff now is rad, So, I All right, Evan, let's see what you got.
My ugliest looking, worst looking bike of all time is the Honda Rune.
You're fired.
Boo.
That thing
You're
is
fired. You are fired. You are not.
That is not a good looking bike.
Prepare for hate from the comment
Yeah.
section. You
I
are
like that bike.
screwed. I like that bike. I think it's granted it was pretty wild, it was big, it was crazy, but like, man, they did it with that bike. They went big, they went like outlandish, and it's cool. It is cool.
It's cool.
Man.
Looks like a bodybuilder.
Not a commercial success by any means, but definitely a cool looking bike.
No, I mean, a hell of a collector's bike now, though.
Yeah, I would think so.
For that reason, you know what I mean? I think I don't think it was the looks that made it hard to sell. It was an expensive bike at the time, you know what I mean? And so it just didn't sell well.
But for the technology it had, it's really not. It wasn't an expensive bike for
yeah,
radical it was.
Value wise, sure, but it still had a high price tag at the time, and so that made it tough to sell. But I still think it's got some very, very nice design with it, and everything was thought out on that bike. And I think honestly you're going to get a lot of comments, Evan. They're going to be like, you're wrong, but there's also going to be people that think you're right as well. And I can see that.
Probably people my age that were like little kids when that bike came out, and you're like, what is that thing?
No, I think you're going to get a mix of all demographics that agree and disagree with you. It was a polarizing bike, but I think Adam and I both agree that it was still a good looking motorcycle.
Yeah, viewers should vote in the comments.
Yeah.
Team Evan or Team Wahid Justin?
Yeah. Well, it's clear that we're right because we picked the 916, and that is undisputed champion of good looking motorcycles. So we're right. You're wrong. Sorry. So we're going to leave it at that. That's the takeaway from this episode. Evan is wrong about motorcycle styling, and Adam and I know what's up. There's a lot of factors that make motorcycles good looking, and a lot of it is X factor, but there's also timeless designs that have come out that stand the test of time because of their shapes. So that's that. Put down in the comments what you think is the best looking bike. What's the worst looking bike? If you agree or disagree with our comments, don't go super hard on Evan. Be nice. He's sensitive. Don't make him cry, but make it sting. Make it sting a little bit, please. So thanks for the support. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next one.